While looking around the restaurant for a client I was supposed to meet, I saw my ex-wife, Susan. She was sitting with a slightly overweight middle-aged man. You could tell he was once in good shape, but good food and time had taken their toll on his physique. Susan was sitting right next to him, and you could tell she was in all her glory. Everything about the guy screamed money. As I stood in the foyer and looked at her, a flood of memories came flooding back to me. It's been 3 years since our divorce, and the emotions have resurfaced like it was yesterday. That's how I got to where I stood today, looking inside instead of sitting next to her. However, as you will see, her wish came true. All my problems started when I had to travel to Albany for a meeting with a client. I decided to do it overnight so that I wouldn't have to drive back for a long time. Within an hour of my car ride, my client called me and said that his fender was broken, but he was okay. He apologized for the late cancellation, and I told him no problem. We can reschedule the meeting. Either way, I really didn't feel prepared for the extra 2 hours of driving ahead of me. I told him that I would do my best and return home to have a romantic dinner with my beloved wife. I wanted to surprise her. An hour and a half later, I was finally driving along my street. The first thing I noticed was that there were 3 strange cars parked in the driveway. My wife would invite her girlfriends over when I was out of town to keep her company. So it wasn't a big deal to me. I parked my car on the street. I walked into the house thinking everything was fine. The first thing I noticed that was wrong was the 4 sets of clothes on my living room floor. I froze just as I heard my wife scream. It wasn't a help me cry, it was a fuck me harder cry that I knew well. My heart sank and I realized that my wife was having sex with someone else. My whole world was destroyed. I didn't want to go upstairs, but I knew I had to do it. As I reached the top of the stairs, I heard my wife let out a primal scream. I quietly peeked around my bedroom door frame and saw 3 men. I didn't know 2 of them, but the third was her boss from work, Jeff Davis, and they had my wife in all places at the same time. I never liked Jeff, and now I know why. Sue, you're a great slut, and I love having you. By the way, thanks for helping me with 2 of my favorite clients. I can tell they love your slutty body as much as you love using it. Jeff praised her. This asshole was pimping my wife for his business clients. All 3 of them started using my wife as their personal sex toy. They gave her everything they had and called her all sorts of derogatory names. She seemed to become even wilder from this treatment, and they had her even more. I've never seen her behave like this in the 10 years we've been married, although I felt that Jeff's choice of slut was the most appropriate name for her. I quietly backed away, but they were so busy that they didn't even notice me. I quietly went downstairs and went into my office. I found my digital video camera, and it had some battery left. There was an old holiday cassette in it and some space left. I didn't want to make a feature film, just document my wife's actions for my lawyer. I quietly walked back to my bedroom door and started recording the video. I got good shots of my wife's face as well as everyone else. I only took 5-10 minutes of video because that was all I could handle. Now, some men may find this sexy and arousing, but not me. This whole scene saddened me. I went limp and felt betrayed. Seeing my wife become a whore for other men was almost unbearable for me, and I went downstairs to calm down and think soberly. I went into my office and took my gun out of the safe, taking the safety off. I'm not a violent person, but I was just in the mood to fire a few bullets if they started acting stupid. I then went into the living room and took all the car keys and wallets from the pants that the men had left on my living room floor. I went outside and deflated all their tires, including Sue's car. When I got back inside, I had a smile on my face that would make the Grinch jealous. I started to formulate a great plan, and I knew it would work if Sue took her cell phone. I noticed it on the bedside table in the bedroom while I was recording a video. I got my camera ready, went behind the stairs, and quickly dialed Sue's cell phone number. It rang several times and I got on her answering machine. She knew I would call around this time, so I called back every 2 minutes until she finally answered. She must have told them to be quiet because they could hear a pin drop in the house. "Hey, Bobby, how's Albany?" Sue asked, out of breath. I could also hear the quiet chuckles of the men in the room. "Looks like you're out of breath. Are you all right?" I asked her with feigned concern in my voice. Yes, I had to run up the stairs to the bedroom to answer the call on my mobile phone. She quickly covered herself. "Well, my client canceled the meeting, and I'm going to be home in just a few minutes. I was wondering if you wanted to go out to dinner," I asked her in an even voice. Inside, I was crazier than I had ever been in my life. "Are you returning home now?" she asked in a nervous voice. "Sounds great. I just need to get ready, baby. See you." She said all this very quickly and hung up before I could answer. I laughed to myself because I knew what would happen in just 1 minute. And sure enough, 4 completely naked people began to descend my stairs into the living room. All the men got dressed in record time, and Sue also got dressed and tidied up her clothes. All the men ran out at the same time, and Sue put on some shoes and a jacket with them. She walked to the door and looked outside, hoping they would leave before she went outside. If she hadn't been so excited, she would have noticed my car parked on the street in front of our house. All the men began shouting something to her at the same time, and she went out onto the porch to listen to what they were talking about. At that very moment, I slammed the front door and locked it behind her. My wife just saw my face as I was closing the door and tried to look through the side window and speak to me with a pleading tone in her voice. The time for talking is over. All the other men returned to my porch and began banging on my front door within minutes. I knew they wanted to take their wallets and keys. I called 911 and reported people trying to break into my house. The dispatcher said one of my neighbors just called her. I told her my name and address. Just 2 minutes later, a police officer showed up at my house. I waited until the police questioned my wife. Then I opened the door and walked out to the 2 police officers who were at the scene. "Officers, these men raped my wife, and I want them all arrested," I told the police. This caused an immediate reaction from the men. They all immediately started shouting, "I was invited. She wanted it herself. I didn't rape anyone, and she wanted it from all of us." Everyone, including me, looked at Sue, waiting for an answer. She lowered her eyes and avoided meeting my gaze. In a quiet voice, full of shame, she said, "I invited these men into my house. I had sex with them and no one raped me. I did this of my own free will." All the men seemed relieved that they were not facing rape charges. Around this time, 2 more police cars arrived. At my request, they wrote down everyone's names for their report. Then the senior policeman said to me, "If your wife invited these men to your house and they are all over 18 years old, there is little we can do for you. I would suggest counseling or something like that." He said this while looking at my wife like she was a piece of shit on his shoe. I told the police to call a taxi and that Mrs. Thomas would not be allowed back into the house that evening. One of the guys called a taxi because he discovered that all their tires were flat. They also tried to accuse me of taking their wallets and keys. But I told the police that I had no idea what they were talking about. I turned and walked back to the porch. Sue stayed with them until the taxi arrived. I just stood on the porch, and daggers flashed in my eyes. My wife tried to come up on the porch and talk to me, which was a brave thing to do at that moment. If she knew how angry I was and that I had a gun on me, she might have run the other way. "Bobby, I'm so sorry that—" She tried to say something, but I immediately cut her off. "You broke my heart, and I will never forgive you. Jeff called you a slut, and I think that's fitting. From now on, I will call you slut and will never use your real name again. If you ever need to talk to me again, do it through Tad." And with that last comment, I went into the house and locked the door, leaving her standing there. She ran back to the group, crying, and Jeff tried to hug her. She pushed him away, and for some reason that made me feel a little better. My good mood quickly faded when I returned to my bedroom. The whole room smelled of sex. For some reason, this just set me off, and I started trashing the whole room. I took the mattress and threw it on the front lawn. I went to the garage and grabbed my toolbox. I began to dismantle the bed and throw it in pieces on the front lawn, along with the mattress. I returned to the bedroom and picked up Sue's cell phone from the floor. I checked the list of her numbers and messages. Of course, she had disgusting emails, photos, and even a few videos of some guys I never knew fucking her all over. However, judging by the photographs, she knew them very well. I started looking for garbage bags to put all her clothes in, and I had to laugh at myself. I was attentive to her, but those days are gone. I carried all the boxes from our bedroom downstairs and placed the contents of each box in a separate pile on the front lawn. I then tackled all of her extra stuff in the guest room. This is where I got my next surprise. I moved all the dresser drawers from the guest room out onto the lawn just like I did with Sui's bedroom items. The last bottom drawer was stuck and wouldn't open all the way. I wasn't in the mood, so I took my anger out on my dresser drawer. I pulled really hard and heard the plastic crack. I pulled out the drawer and tried to open it slowly. It opened immediately, and I was able to see what was causing the problem. Under the drawer were 7 or 8 DVDs. I broke one of the plastic cases, but the drive was still in good condition. My heart sank again as I looked at the discs. I didn't think I could feel any worse, but I did. While going down the stairs, I read the titles on the discs, and it didn't make me happy. I went into the living room and put everything on shelves for review. First up was Sue with her best friend Sarah at Sarah's house. Sue helped out at her parties in Avon every Tuesday and Thursday, or so I thought. They actually had sex with some guys at her house. Over the course of several hours, Sue and Sarah had sex in all sorts of ways with multiple partners. I started to cry, but stopped when I saw the last 2 discs. The first was how Sue had her own tennis instructor during lessons that I paid for. She went there every Saturday and always came back too tired to make love on a Saturday night. Now I really know why. The second disc showed Sue having sex at her workplace at the boardroom table with Jeff, her boss, and Jeff's boss, Bill Evans. Bill was a big deal in the community, and his picture always appeared in the newspaper at one event or another. I watched as he carried out his charitable work on my wife's private parts. I took out a large envelope and put it in a cell phone, discs, and a cassette tape that I had filmed earlier. I planned to give the entire envelope to my lawyer and best friend, Ted Worth. We've been friends for as long as I can remember. He was one of the only 2 people in the world that I truly trusted. Nothing else mattered. I looked at the computer desk and saw Sue's computer. I pressed space and it came to life. I made copies of everything that was on the computer. Every file, emails, photos, and videos I copied. It took about an hour to copy everything over, and then I sat down and started going through my wife's computer. There were videos of her having sex, just like the ones on the CDs I found. I found pictures of her that you can only see on adult sites. Then I started reading her emails, sent over about 6 months. She tried to hide them under some stupid program file name, but I found them. She had several letters from Jeff and several other men. The rest was between her and Sarah. They were only being written off last week when I read one that literally almost killed me. I thought about using my gun, but realized she wasn't worth it. I had to be strong. The only email that upset me this much was from Sue to Sarah. Sarah asked her why she didn't leave me and become single again. She also asked Sue to perfectly describe what she wanted in her future husband. This is what she said in response. Sarah, I don't want to do anything with him now. Bobby is as loyal as he is stupid. I really feel like it's only a matter of time before he finds out about my secret lifestyle. He's not completely stupid. It's just that love is blind. He's been blooming a bit lately, and his belly is getting bigger every day. Sometimes it's hard to be attracted to him when I compare him to the guys we have. I also hate beards and mustaches. This makes him look, I don't know, kind of disgusting. I guess I really loved him at one time, but the excitement of the last few years is too much to give up. His best friend is a lawyer, and if he interferes, it could cause difficulties. Jeff and Bill from work hint at promotions and raises, also including a rise in their pants. I laugh. I also want at least a house and a car. If I do everything right, I can also get a little alimony every month on top. I'm looking forward to our party on Tuesday. I should be there if I can still walk after my tennis injury. I laugh. God, Tony is a machine. Make sure I get the video from last Thursday. This was the first time I worked out with so many guys at the same time. As for the man of my dreams, I want him to be wealthy, loyal, manageable, and stupid. He has to kiss my ass anytime I want and still ask which butt. I laugh. I don't care about the bedroom department as long as it doesn't have money. I laugh. I can get everything I need somewhere outside the house. Sometimes it seems almost too easy. Damn, Bobby is home now. I have to go. See you on Tuesday. Call me. Sue, best friend. I read this letter so many times that I could almost memorize it. The words disgusting and the last few years really hurt me more than words can express. Was this how she really felt about me? Was I so blind with love that she cheated on me for over 2 years? Immediately after that, I went to bed and fell asleep on the sofa. I woke up early and called work. I really didn't sleep well and mostly tossed and turned from side to side. Calling in sick from work, I called my best friend Ted Worth. He was my friend at first, but he was also my lawyer on most issues. Mary picked up the phone. She was Tad's secretary, and I had known her almost as long as Tad. That morning I asked for an urgent meeting, and she said he would be in court all day. Mary, tell Ted to meet me in an hour in his office. If he bothers you with some crap, mention Tammy Brown's name. This should get his attention. See you in an hour. I told her, and hung up before she could answer. I started to get dressed, and then my cell phone rang. I looked at the number because I didn't want to talk to Sue at all. It was an unfamiliar number, so I picked up the phone in case it was Ted calling back from somewhere. Hello, Mr. Thomas. This is Bill Evans from Susan's office. If possible, I would like to talk to you about the troubles that happened last evening at your house. If you would see fit to meet with me today in my office, I would like to help clarify the situation for all concerned. I wasn't sure he knew I had video of him having my wife at his place of work, but I knew he was worried about 2 of Jeff Davis's big clients. Plus, my wife and Jeff were valuable to him. I don't think he wanted to lose his valuable employees. I also knew that he was worried about negative publicity for his company and about himself personally. Mr. Evans, I have an important meeting this morning, but I promise that I will call you back on this number before noon to arrange something for today. I reassured him in response. My tone was even, and I said it as if he was talking some sense into me. God, he was in for a big surprise. As I walked out the door, I could still see what looked like a really weird yard sale. The broken bed and all of Sue's clothes were still there. One of my elderly neighbors gave me a small wave, and a funny expression appeared on his face. I knew I was going to be a 9-day wonder, as they say in the news business. It was a suburb. I went to the city center and had something to eat. I gulped down some food and headed straight to Ted's office. Mary prepared a cup of coffee for me. Lots of cream and no sugar. We really knew each other for a long time. Holy shit, Bobby. I don't know what you have for Tad, but I mentioned his name and he told me to cancel all appointments for today. I could use a month off if you want to tell me who Tammy Brown is, she added jokingly. You'll have to ask Ted. By the way, where is he? I asked her. He said he would be there right away. He needed to reschedule his meeting with the judge for today's court hearing, she told me. Just at that moment, he entered the door. Holy shit, Bobby! Tammy Brown, you must be in big trouble for mentioning that name to me. Come into the office and let's talk. Mary, don't connect me with anyone right now. Tad said all this very quickly. I took my coffee and he closed the door so we could talk. I told him about the events of the previous evening and what I had learned about Sue's new lifestyle. Then I gave him an envelope full of things I had collected and he finally spoke. He listened to my story and never interrupted. I could see the legal wheels turning in his head as he recalled the events of the previous evening. I also told him about Bill Evans's request for a meeting today. Well, Bobby, as they say, first things first. I've known you for a long time and I know you're devastated. Is there any chance that you and Sue will make peace? He asked me. Ted, if we were talking about Katie, your wife, and you saw those videos and read the emails, you would leave her in a heartbeat. I want a divorce, but I also want to do some serious damage. I'm not going to go quietly into the night, I admitted to him. Okay, first we'll sue Tony and the Ace Tennis Club. We can't touch Sarah because she's just a good friend who plays with Sue. Sue's company is a different matter entirely. Secondly, I plan to sue the 2 clients who were at your house, as well as their companies. We're also going after Jeff Davis, Bill Evans, and company, he said. This might get bad before it gets better, Bobby, he told me. I don't care even if I have to stand on the street and use my fists. I'm going to make these people pay for screwing me through Sue, I told him with anger in my voice. Okay, Bobby. Tell me again what Bill Evans wanted, and we'll go from there. Ted told me. We discussed several different options, and I liked the last one the most. A full frontal attack on Sue's company sounded best. I had an ace up my sleeve with video footage of Davis, Evans, and Sue in their boardroom. Tad told me that, as Sue's bosses, they controlled her position. It can also lead to serious jail time. I liked the way it sounded. Tad also hinted that once Bill Evans found out what we had on him, his attitude would change, and they would offer me some money. I told him that if it was less than $2 million, he could kiss my ass. I'll tell you what, Ted, let it be $2.5 million. I've seen your legal fees before, I told him with a laugh. Come over tonight at 7 p.m. and Katie will cook a delicious dinner for both of us. I think you could use a break from home, he demanded. I called Bill Evans back and made an appointment for 2 p.m. Immediately after this, Mary poked her head into the office. Ted, they're calling you on line 1, she told him. Mary, I told you, no calls, he said, and got really angry. Sorry, Ted, but this is Susan. She wants to talk to you, and I thought you might want to answer, Mary continued. Sorry, Mary. It's going to be a long day, and it's just getting started. Does she know Bobby is here? He asked her. Not that I know, Ted, she countered. Tell her I'll talk to her in a minute. He said more softly as Mary quickly walked out into the reception area. Well, I bet she's already discovered that her cell phone, computer, and all her DVDs are missing. I bet she was mad that I dumped all her shit on the front lawn along with our bed, I told him. Wow, you really had a busy evening. Let me talk and don't interfere in the conversation. As your lawyer, I need to clarify a few things right now, he hinted to me, pressing the connection. I started to hear a one-way conversation, but I could almost make out what she was saying to Tad without even hearing her words. Hi, Susan. This is Ted. Yes, I already talked to him. Bobby is a great guy and my friend. I thought that of all people, you would be the one who would cover his back and not stab him with a knife. No excuses, Sue. I'm not in the mood. Yes, I'm going to represent him. He has very strong arguments. You know it won't be pleasant, right? I'll talk to him. But you crushed a man who was always faithful to you and loved you to death. I don't think he cares what you think. My best advice is to get yourself a good lawyer. You will need one. Yes, Bill Evans made an appointment for 14:00, although I don't think you should be there. Listen to me, Sue. If you so much as show up at the outside office door and listen through the glass, I'll tell Bobby to leave and all hell will break loose. Better wait it out and control yourself today. I know he put your stuff out on the lawn, but just like you can invite strangers into your bedroom, he can throw your stuff out of the house and onto the front lawn. Frankly, I'm surprised he didn't shoot anyone last night. Oh yes, he was with him, although for the purpose of self-defense. Remember, he thought you were raped. This was stated in the police report. I don't know, but if it were my Katie, I'd be in jail right now. I think he was hot-tempered under the circumstances. As for your computer, cell phone, and any other things that were not in the house this morning, you will have to ask the other owner of the house. Perhaps he left it all on the lawn along with your clothes, and someone took it all. I really can't say. I have completed all of your escrow paperwork on the house, and you both have the same rights in the house. How you choose to exercise these rights is up to each of you. Okay, I'll tell him. Right now, I would recommend that you stay there and let Bobby live in the house until everything is sorted out. I don't think it's safe for you to be in the same house with him right now. Listen, Sue, even now I want to punch you in the nose, so don't insist. Stay with Sarah and I'll be in touch. Please have your lawyer call me when you have one. Tears won't help you now, Sue. In addition to being his lawyer, I am also his friend. Your tears fall on deaf ears. I can be a ruthless bastard whenever I want, and this seems like the perfect situation. I have always liked you and respected you until today. I'm sorry that you will see a side of me that only my enemies and ill-wishers see. You won't like it. Okay, but stay away from him and don't leave your office. Right now, he wants nothing to do with you. Goodbye. Tad finished and looked up at me. I think you heard most of the conversation? he asked me sadly. Yeah, I just wish I could meet her face to face again and tell her how I really feel. Although I don't think I want to go through the pain of seeing her again. At least not right now, I admitted to my friend. I'll tell you what, Bobby. Do two things for me, he asked me, instantly changing his emotional mood to positive and optimistic. Get these videos for me. Tad asked me to pull out from the envelope the videotape from the night before, the videotape of Tony at the tennis club, and the videotape of Sue with Mr. Davis and Mr. Evans in her office. I gave him the videos, and he told me to invite Mary to have lunch with me. I looked at him strangely, and he immediately answered me in kind. I think it would be better if I look at them personally, so as not to upset you all before our meeting at 14Y. I don't think watching this material will do you any good right now, and I don't want you to get angry before we even meet Bill Evans. I knew he was right and thanked him, telling Mary the good news. She told me to take her somewhere expensive if Ted would pay. I laughed, and we both left the building. Mary was a wonderful dinner companion, and she made me forget all my problems for the next hour. When we returned, I heard Tad yell as we walked through the office door. We walked in, and he was in a great mood, doing a celebratory dance at his table. This recording is great, Bobby. I do not believe in this, he told me. I got a funny and sad look on my face, and I think he finally understood why. Oh, Bobby, I'm really sorry. I didn't celebrate these videos. I know Sue really hurt you. I was just excited because of what I just found, he admitted to me. Bobby, come here. I need you to look at something for me. Ted asked me as I followed his instructions and stood right behind him so I could see over his shoulder. Did you watch the entire tape that Tony made at the tennis club with Sue? He asked me. No, I only looked at some of them. Last night I tried to get through all the footage without throwing up or going out and killing someone, I told him honestly. Well, I have a surprise for you. Just before Tony and Sue finish, they begin to gather a small crowd in the men's locker room, the tennis club locker room. I don't want to say it, but she let the other men who were watching the gangbang fuck her after Tony was done. I'm not telling you this to make you angry or sad, but because of this man right here. Tad told me this, pointing to the screen on his desk. The person he was pointing at was an older man wrapped in a towel. He had longer gray hair and a mustache like a walrus. He asked me if I recognized him. Tad put the video on play and I could see him throwing off the towel and showing off a very large man tool that any man would be proud of. The only problem was that he walked right up to my wife and fucked her. The next minute, she was surrounded by 5 more guys waiting for their turn to talk to Sue. Ted, I have no idea who this asshole is, but I assume you do? I answered him wisely. Bobby, this is for our meeting today at the tennis club at 16 Nasi, he told me. Tad was excited, and then he told me why. I smiled when he told me his plan. Besides being my friend, Tad was a damn good lawyer. I was glad that he was on my side this time. We left his office to head downtown for our 2 p.m. meeting with Bill Evans. We took with us a portable DVD player, some photographs that we had printed before leaving, and some legal envelopes. We entered Sue's building and headed straight to Bill's office on the top floor. Sue's office was on the floor below. We waited in the reception area until we were invited into Mr. Evans's office. Just before I entered, I felt someone looking at me. I looked down the hallway and saw the woman disappear around the corner when she noticed me looking at her. Try to guess who it was, I told myself. I was just glad I didn't have to deal with her today. We both walked into Bill's office, and it was furnished with expensive furniture. At each location on the wall, there was a plaque, award, or photograph of a famous person with Bill Evans. He had a nice office, and the first thought that came to my mind was whether he had Sue in that room. At this thought, I really began to dislike Mr. Evans more than ever. I introduced Tad and started doing all the talking. Hello, Mr. Evans. This is my friend Ted Worth, and he will be at the meeting you called today, I told Bill as we all shook hands. Mr. Thomas, Bob, I thought this was going to be a little meeting behind closed doors between you and me? Mr. Evans asked me. Well, I thought I'd take Tad with me, Whatever you say to me, you can say to him, I said. I didn't bring it up for discussion, so he accepted Tad's presence and started talking directly to me, ignoring Tad. This brought a smile to Tad's face. I knew what was coming, but I let Mr. Evans go first before we popped his balloon. Bob, can I call you Bob? Bill asked me. No problems at all. I actually thought it would be nice to have Jeff Davis at this meeting as well. I don't know if it's possible, but it applies to him too, I told Mr. Evans. He thought for a moment and pressed the intercom button. Julie, tell Jeff I need him in my office right now. Tell him to stop whatever he's doing and come here right now. Okay, Jeff will be here any minute. In the meantime, let me just say how sorry I am for all the trouble Jeff and Sue have caused in your life. I know last night must have been terrible, but if we work on this together, we might be able to help everyone involved, Bill said optimistically. What do you mean, Mr. Evans? I asked him, waiting for Jeff to arrive. I really like your wife, Sue, and... Bill said this, but was interrupted as Jeff walked right through the door. He stopped in his tracks and looked like he was about to turn around and leave, but Bill ordered him to sit down. He sat down reluctantly and didn't look at me at all. Bob, I just wanted to say that I really liked Sue, almost like a daughter. He began to speak when Tad interrupted him. Are you saying that you like incest too, Mr. Evans? Tad asked, completely taking him by surprise. I started laughing to myself because I knew what Tad's comment was about. What you said? Do I like incest? What the hell does this mean? He asked Tad with righteous indignation. Well, let me show you. As they say, a picture is worth 1,000 words. Ted told them, putting the DVD player on Bill's desk. These are stills from the video that you will see in just a minute. Tad handed them to Jeff, not Bill. Jeff's eyes became as big as saucers, and he slowly passed them straight to Bill. The photographs showed Bill and Jeff, both paired with my wife, and there was no doubt about who was in the picture or what they were doing. I even think Bill recognized his own boardroom table where he and Sue used to have sex. Jeff, are you going to tell me that you were stupid enough to record this on video and even give out copies? Bill asked, almost at a loss for words. It was clear that Jeff had no answer at the moment and was completely tongue-tied. Well, Mr. Evans, this is how it will happen. Oh, by the way, I'm Bobby's lawyer and also his friend. So let me tell you what we want and how we want you to handle it, Tad told the stunned audience. I enjoyed every minute of it. First, Sue will keep her job, period. Bobby senses that she will need a job, and she seems to get along very well with everyone here. He said this to Bill with a slight wink. Secondly, Mr. Davis is no longer welcome here. Period. Sue stays, and this guy leaves, Tad said to Bill, pointing at the stunned Jeff. Thirdly, we want you to make us a monetary offer that does not insult our intelligence. We will only consider your first offer and respond yes or no within 5 business days. We plan to go to court before the end of 2 months, and maybe earlier if necessary. Before they could say anything, Tad pressed play and turned the screen around so Bill could see it. It showed both men possessively having my wife over and over again in their conference room. Jeff didn't need to watch since he was the one in charge of the video recording. Bill just watched with his mouth open. I could see the gears in his head working overtime. He thought about how to save his business, his reputation, his family life, and most importantly, his money. I knew something was going to happen soon. Jeff, when these gentlemen leave today, we will have a very serious conversation about your future employment here. I'll talk to my lawyer and see if we can work out a figure that makes you a little happy. You both understand that this could be very bad for business if this becomes known before my proposal is considered. Bill stated, thinking out loud. Don't worry, Mr. Evans. We will keep your secret until we see your serious proposal. However, I would not be in a rush to fire Mr. Davis right now. He may have a few extra copies of the videotape. He can use this as leverage if we don't do it. You and Mr. Davis can discuss this yourself. Oh, and by the way, you both could face prison time for having sex with an employee, which directly affects your employment and promotion. Tad told them as we both stood up to leave. Tad took back the DVD player and the pictures we had brought. We left as Bill and Jeff were about to have a little heart-to-heart. I went over to ask Tad something, but he told me to be quiet until we got outside. I didn't notice my wife standing around the corner trying to eavesdrop on our conversation, but he did. The last thing I heard was Mr. Evans shouting into Julie's intercom, "Get Sue Thomas here immediately." I smiled because I knew it would be a fun meeting. Bill would soon find out that I found his DVD in our house. When we got outside, I asked him why he gave Jeff a way out by telling him to use his own videotape against Bill. "Divide and conquer, as they always say," Ted told me. "It will be better if they do not act as a team, but everyone's for themselves. Thus, if Bill makes a playful offer to us, we will start playing against each other. I also know that Jeff and Bill have a family and go to church. Although you wouldn't know it from the videotapes they're filming, they don't want to rock the family boat right now," Tad told me wisely. As I left the building, I realized that this would now be the place where my wife cheated on me, rather than the proud place where my wife works. I felt sad about this thought, like many others in my head. Ted brought me back to reality. "Okay, let's have a beer before our next meeting at 16 Was at the tennis club. We could both use a drink right now, and I need to ask you something, but I'm not sure how to do it yet." Ted told me about this while we were driving across town towards the tennis club. We popped into a cute little bar restaurant next to the tennis club. Tad ordered 2 beers and started talking to me. "Bobby, I think Bill Evans will make an offer, but only for a little less than $1 million. I know his legal team from another firm, and they are very good. The main character is also a realist. I'll call him tomorrow and let him know that a bad, low-price offer won't be good for his client's business or family life. I'll offer them to do it for about $3 million, or just forget about it altogether," he told me. "Next, I need to know if the offer is not accepted, which may be, whether I can drag Susan through the mud. I won't be kind to her for anything in the world. I can't do anything other than what I know will win the case. It will be my unpleasant job as your legal representative if it comes to that. This can get ugly and very public. I will use every tool at my disposal to win our case. You may not like all the details that might become public about Sue, your marriage, and possibly your sex life. I will make her look like the fallen woman she has become. I don't know if you thought about this at all," Ted added at the last minute. "Yes, I really thought about it. I'm a bigger person than any of these people think I am. If this needs to be done, you have my blessing. But I'd like to go down the money offer route before we go crazy," I hinted to Tad. "Okay, first we'll see what Bill has to offer you. However, if it sucks, I will complete all the necessary paperwork on the same day. I will also use my newspaper contacts as well as my friends at 3 local news stations. They'd be happy to get a few samples of videotape or stills, even if they have to put blue bars in front of the juicy bits, as they say in sitcoms. Ted, you've always been there for me, and I trust your judgment. I just wish this whole mess never happened. It was more fun to be a clueless husband than to be publicly cuckolded by a cheating wife. You still have my permission to do whatever is ever necessary. After all, I didn't start this shit, but I'm going to end it soon," I told him with anger in my voice. "Okay, Bobby, no problem. Now let's discuss the material for our next meeting. This guy, Mr. Harry Rydell, is the owner of the Ace Tennis Club. This is the guy I pointed out in the video in my office, he told me. He will say that adults will be adults and he will not be able to do anything for us. Even Tony's tennis coach can be fired just for show. Then he could hire him again next week. I checked and Tony is very popular there, especially with the ladies, if you know what I mean. He could hire him back to save face with the club members. But remember, Bobby, it's mostly men who pay the club dues, and women go too. Don't forget this fact because it will be important for your interaction with Mr. Rydell." He told me how things were. We arrived just in time, and you could tell Mr. Rydell and Tad didn't like each other. This was evident from the first time Rydell spoke. "Okay, Worth, you called the meeting, so let's finish. I want to get this over with as quickly as possible," Mr. Rydell told Thad without any kindness. "Mr. Rydell, this is Bob Thomas," he said, nodding in my direction, "and his wife is a member of your club. It has come to our attention that Tony Simba, your tennis instructor, was having an affair with Mr. Thomas's wife. We want to know what you plan to do about this," Tad finished. He waited for Rydell to speak, but even I knew that he would take everything upon himself and, in a few words, send Tad to hell. Look, what two adults do in the privacy of their own home in their free time is up to them. I'm not their mother, so stop wasting my time, Harry Rydell told us. As for you, Mr. Thomas, if you can't make your wife happy in the bedroom, don't come to me crying and blame me if she cuckolds your sad ass. There are many unhappy wives who go to the Ace Tennis Club. Some of them keep coming back because of the personal service my staff provides them, if you know what I mean. Harry said this, winking at me. I would have reached out and hit him, but Ted grabbed my wrist and whispered to me to keep my cool and follow his lead. You see, Harry, you are operating on the assumption that this happened outside the club and that it happened without the full knowledge and approval of the owners. It would be wrong of you to assume that, Harry, Tad told him, pulling out a DVD player and placing it on his desk. Ted pressed play and turned the screen towards Harry. This was a hint that Harry was throwing in the towel and starting to have my wife. It was clear that he did not like the look of the video recording. Thad began to speak, before Harry had a chance to think. Harry, you, with full knowledge of this and with the complicity of your work colleague, took advantage of the services of a paying member of your club. Mrs. Susan Thomas, a married woman, even received her dues from Mr. Thomas. Now he is a dissatisfied customer. Tad told the very quiet Mr. Rydell about this. When this comes out, all men, that is, men who pay dues, will want to know whether their wife is having sex here when they also pay the bills. I'll have to subpoena everyone who was in the locker room that day. I'm not sure that they, that is, those who are married, will not be too happy with you about this, Tad began to tell him in an almost fairy tale tone. I also almost forgot about the reasonable expectation of privacy, even when videotaping the locker room in the first place. Harry, when I'm done with you, your club will no longer be the beacon of community it once was, and I also think your bank coffers will be a little lighter in the near future, Ted added for greater persuasiveness. So, what we want is for you to make us a serious offer and call me back right away. If you do this in a timely manner, it can save you a lot of inconvenience and loss of money. Ted finally finished. We could see Harry Rydell considering his options. Ted, as always, you're a real asshole, but I can't argue with your logic. I'll call you tomorrow with my offer. If I pay, all the tapes will return to me and never see the light of day. I will fire Tony voluntarily. Now, if that's all you legal blackmailers came for, get the fuck out, Harry Rydell told us, as Ted took the DVD player with a smile and turned it off. Oh, by the way, say hi to Tito Martinez, Ted said to Harry, leaving the room. Go to hell, Worth. That was all Harry could say in response. Tad laughed all the way back to the parking lot. It was a lot of fun, so now we're waiting for suggestions, Tad told me as we went to his house for a delicious home-cooked meal. By the end of the week, Bill Evans had offered just under $2.7 million to keep Sue as his employee. Jeff Davis was fired after he foolishly gave Bill Evans all his videotapes and had nothing else on him. So Bill just fired him, and there wasn't much that poor old Jeff could do. I went after the two idiots who were with my wife the night I caught her with Jeff. They were two of Jeff's big clients. Well, they both didn't want any publicity either from a company standpoint or for themselves, so they each offered me $1 million to leave. Harry Rydell didn't want to offer anything and told us to sue him. We did that, and he lost $3 million when we were done with him. He had so many questions about who was fucking who at the club that he lost half of his club members and was forced to give up everyone else. I think he thought he could get away with it, but the judge didn't like the footage of the private locker rooms. He also didn't like it when people had other people's wives. I gave Sue a house and a car just like she wanted. Although I didn't have to pay her a penny in child support, I only saw her twice in court. I called her a slut both times when I said hello, and it made her cry. I always wondered why she was crying now and not before she started all this crap in my life. For being the worst time of my life, I got more money than I ever had. I was smart and took Ted's advice. It still hurts, and I carry it with me to this day. All the events of that terrible year that I have just described came to mind in the blink of an eye. I didn't even notice anyone talking to me until I woke up from my flashback nightmare and heard the restaurant manager ask if he could help. I wasn't sure how long I stood there, motionless, remembering the past. I shook my head to clear my thoughts and returned to the restaurant. Sorry, I was just thinking about a problem I had once. I saw the party I came to see, so thanks again. I told the manager about this when he gave me that strange look that people usually give to an elderly person who doesn't have everything at home. With a specific purpose, I walked straight to my ex-wife's table. I think the surprise hit her first. When I was last married to Susan, I was overweight and had long hair and a beard. I allowed myself to take it easy on my sore knee from an old baseball injury. That's what I told myself at the time, but I just got used to my life and my wife. Now I had my hair cut short, skinny from working out every other day, and my knee was fixed thanks to the money I got from Jeff and Bill's company. My suits were now expensive, and I always tried to look good in public. I decided to speak first. "You look great today, slut. I almost forgot how good you looked," I said, trying to get her to talk. I still knew how to push her buttons, and I did it on purpose. "My name is Susan, Bobby. Why don't you call me by my name?" She answered me the same in anger. "Hey, I didn't tell you your name, slut. You know who did. I just think it's appropriate. I told you 3 years ago that you broke my heart, and I will always refer to you by that name." I told her about this when the guy next to her began to protest and get up from his seat. Sue pushed him back and told him not to make a scene. She cried a little and her makeup ran. Her boyfriend said, "Go powder your nose, Sue, and put your pretty face in order. I'll take care of this asshole for you." And with these words, she stood up, looked into my eyes, and I looked back at her. With just one glance, I must have shown all the pain I had been carrying within me for the past 3 years. She cried again, even harder. I was surprised that she still had any feelings for me at all, or maybe she still felt guilty. I think it was a mixture of both. "I expect you to be gone when I get back," she told me with tears streaming down her face. I just now noticed the very large engagement ring on her ring finger as she wiped her eyes with her hand and walked into the ladies' room. "I take it you are Bob Thomas, Sue's ex-husband?" he asked me with disgust in his voice. "Yes, and you must be the slut's new wish come true." I told him about it when I saw the anger appear on his face. "I'm Sue's CFO, and if I were you, I'd stop calling her that." He tried to say it bravely, but I could tell he really didn't want to make a scene. "I did this to talk to you alone. I have 3 questions for you, and I will disappear from your life forever." I told him about it, and it brought a questioning expression on his face. "I was in your shoes once, and I just didn't want anyone else to suffer my fate again. I guess the slut told you I was a shitty husband, beat her or neglected her, or was a skirt chaser." I asked him about it and saw that this was exactly what she told him. "Well, I'm not here to defend my reputation to you. Honestly, I don't think anything good would come of it. I just wanted to know first if Sarah still hosts her Avon parties at her house on Tuesdays and Thursdays." I asked him. Sue helps Sarah sell decorations at her parties on Mondays and Wednesdays. "It shows how much you remember." He snapped back. "Fine. Does she still take tennis lessons on Saturdays?" I asked quickly. "Sue plays ball with a racket on Sundays. Boy, you have a shitty memory from being married to her for so long," he said with triumph in his voice. "Fine. Last question. Have you ever looked under the bottom drawer of the dresser in your living room?" I quickly asked. "No." "Why on earth should I do this?" he objected. "The 3 questions I asked you are why we are no longer together. I still have all the materials left over from the divorce in my office. Legal shit, emails from Sarah and the slut, and hours of videotapes. I've always carried this with me for the past 3 years, so I thought you should have it." I said this, taking out a very old and folded piece of paper from my wallet. This is what the slut wrote to Sarah when she asked about how to get rid of me before I discovered that the slut was cheating on me. I didn't know her at all after I read that letter, and I probably still don't. "But it's all about you," I said, handing him the paper. However, I knew Sue very well and knew that she was a person of compulsive habits. She always did the same thing, the same way every time. Sometimes it drives me crazy. I also had the feeling that just because she had a new man, she would still do what she always did. He seemed hesitant to take the piece of paper, but I think curiosity got the better of him. He reached over and opened the email. I've carried it with me for the past 3 years, and from time to time, I've reread it and tried to improve my life so that no woman would ever write that about me again. Of all the videotapes and other things I learned about, this email hit home the most. I think that's why I still carried it with me. This is the same email that I described earlier in my story. Peter read the letter slowly and placed it on the table. He pulled out a pen, wrote a note on it very quickly, and, to my surprise, left the restaurant. No looking back, no thanking me, nothing. He had a completely stone face. I leaned over and looked at what he wrote in her old email. I'll go back to the house in a minute. Please stay here and I will call you back in 15 minutes. Please wait here for me. For some strange reason, I need to look under the bottom drawer of my living room dresser. Be right back. Peter. I knew he had seen the light even if he didn't like it. Something told me that I was too close to the mark on all 3 issues. The email was the last straw, and I think he needed to see for himself. I left a note before setting Sue's table and left. There was no way I was going to sit in this restaurant with anyone tonight. I returned to the foyer and called my client. They said they were late anyway and wouldn't mind rescheduling the meeting. Just before I left, I took one more look at the table. Sue returned to the table and looked around for Peter. She sat down and looked at her old email and Peter's note below. Her face turned white as a ghost as she recognized her old email and what Peter had written to her. The last time I saw my wife, she was crying so hard that the entire restaurant was looking at her. I really felt sorry for her, but at the same time I didn't care. That was the last time I saw her again. I still wonder if Peter found something under the dresser drawer. Sue's crying told me he could do it. Subscribe to our channel so that your second chaff doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think about listening to the next one.